Welcome into the Moving in Norfolk Podcast, where this is going to be your number one real estate resource in the Hampton Roads market. I am your host, Craig Houston, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down things that you need to know about Hampton Roads. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how Hampton Roads has now been designated as one of the top national retiree destinations across the United States. We're also going to be breaking down things that you need to know when it comes down to how interest rates are affecting inventory levels and how that impacts buyers and sellers. We're also going to break down real estate trends that's going on around the marketplace and get into a lot more details about answering your specific questions that you have, both as buyers and as sellers. Let's get into it right after this. Okay, so let's get directly into it. I am super pumped to be here with you today, and man, we got so many things to discuss as we get into our podcast episode today, episode 2, and I hope that you enjoy episode 1. If you haven't, we'll leave it linked down in the description below so you can always check out the previous episodes. But we're not going to waste too much time. We're going to get directly into it, and we're going to start with an article from the New York Post. Yeah, that's right. I said the New York Post, but it does state top housing markets for 2025 cities where home sales are set to soar. Now, let's get into this article and be here and talk about some of the things that they're talking about over at the New York Post. It says the new housing market may be squeezed by high mortgage rates, but in 2025, expect to see explosive sales growth in some cities, particularly in the Sun Belt. Home sales in the Realtor.com top housing markets for 2025 are projected to rise between 13.5% and 27.1% compared to year over year. This represents a substantial increase compared with the national outlook, where existing home sales are projected to grow by 1.5% next year. Across the markets identified by Realtor.com economists, there are unifying themes: regional concentration in the South and West, considerable recent sales growth, abundant inventory, and in many cases driven by new construction and younger populations, many of whom are connected to the military or have international ties. These markets are also relatively lower cost and continue to benefit from flexible work arrangements. In addition, these markets have been able to mitigate the impact of high mortgage rates, having higher shares of outright ownership with no mortgage debt and more residents eligible for government-backed mortgage loans like VA and FHA loans. All the top 10 markets for 2025 are in the South and West, with Colorado Springs, Colorado topping the list. 2 Florida cities, including Miami and Orlando, also making an entrance, with Texas strongholds like El Paso and McAllen. What makes these markets stand out from others is that they've seen sales grow faster and been able to expand on that momentum. Although affordability is still stretched by many households in these markets, as in the case just about everywhere, aspiring homeowners are able to create opportunities and access home ownership as a result of government-backed loan programs that enable lower down payments. Okay, these programs are particularly valuable to the younger families with military and international connections that can call these top markets home. Home sales in the U.S. are expected to spike the most next June. Check out the top 20 cities forecasted to see the biggest year-over-year increase in existing home sales in 2025. Well, let's look and see. Colorado comes in at number 1 with a November median list price of $485, with a projected existing home sales of up to 27.5% increase. Miami comes in at number 2, $525. But then look who's number 3. Virginia Beach. November median list price $394,900. Projected year-over-year increase in existing home sales is expected to be about 23.4%. Virginia Beach has over 35 miles of coastline with sandy beaches, seafood restaurants, and a bustling boardwalk. It's a home to the largest concentration of military personnel outside of the Pentagon, and the defense sector job market is thriving. The area is also popular with retirees, with the city making the list of the best places in the U.S. to retire, according to a U.S. News and World Report ranking, which we'll talk about here in a second. But Richmond came in at number 4 with a November median list price of $429,595 and a projected year-over-year increase in existing home sales about 21.6%. Richmond is a city steeped in U.S. history, featuring walkable neighborhoods like Churchill and Bellevue, which offer a blend of historic charm and modern amenities. Okay, so after that, you have McAllen, Texas, El Paso, Little Rock, Arkansas, Greensboro, Washington, D.C., and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, rounding out the top 10. Now, what I will say that this article gave us in thought here to think about is that it's always what I've been saying. I just don't know how many people are really aware of it, that our military presence and our defense sector job market definitely really helps out this local economy. And we'll see that here as maybe with this we get into some active inventory. We may talk about that here a little bit more while we can show what the data points to where the pandemic just accelerated where our marketplace was going anyway, and now it's very sustainable versus in comparison to other marketplaces that you may actually research or thinking about or considering relocating to, because of the simple fact our military presence provides a buffer. Our defensive sector provides a buffer. So we have a lower floor than a lot of these other markets that saw a lot of potential gains through the market bustling with new construction builds, new land developments, bigger companies moving to those areas to start headquarters like Austin, Texas, where, yeah, the marketplace is there. The demand is there, the supply is there, but at some point in time, you oversupply, and when you oversupply, then the demand starts to decrease. Now you have this inventory sitting there and no one looking to buy it, or you're having to make a lot of concessions to get the house off the market. Not in our market. Our market has never been like that. Our market has always been very consistent across the board. I mean, I guess during the pandemic, not during the pandemic, but the financial housing bubble, maybe it was a little bit different then, but consistently we stay at a level playing field where our market, our military sector, our defense sector don't really let us, crater, because our service members, our civilian counterparts, our government employees, they all need somewhere to stay, and they all have these government-backed loans, like the article pointed out, to where they have opportunities to not have to put as much of a down payment down, or no down payment at all if they're using a VA loan, to where that conserves costs, that preserves costs, and they're able to get into these homes and hold on to these homes as well too, because they're getting, income enough to be in this area. So I do think that's important to note, and I think that's a great highlight that it actually has here. As a matter of fact, let's pull up just what I'm speaking about here. So let's look at active listings before we jump into our next article here. So when you look at the active listings, of course, you'll see that we're at 5,429 as of November 2024, but that's not what I really want to show you. I want to show you before the pandemic where our inventory levels was at when it comes to listings. So if you go back to 2015 June, we had about 15,000 homes on the market. Over a third of that is now only on the market and available. In 2016 August, let's do June again. In 2016, 14,900 in 2016. When you see the next peak, 13,605 in 2017. In 2018, 12,387. Do you see the next peak in 2019? This is when the pandemic it's starting to get closer to the pandemic. And you see in June of 2019, you were sitting at 11,518, and then we fell off a cliff during the pandemic to the next one to 8,000, down to 5,000. We came all the way down to 3,000. Now we're just not getting back to a level above 5. But every year after we peaked in 2015, we started to decline in home sales. Well, not at home sales, in active listings, I'm sorry. And active inventory available for a buyer to purchase. So to me, that showed that we was already heading that way. So if we go back to that peak of June, you'll see monthly supply of inventory actually looks like June of 2015. You'll see we was in the buyer's market. We was in a heavy buyer's market, where you're sitting around 10 months of inventory. 7 months of inventory, 9.8 months of inventory, 8.1 months of inventory in 2017, 5.1, 5.2. Even during before the pandemic, we was at 5. We was already trending out of a buyer's market down into a seller's market. Now, I think if the pandemic never would have happened, I think that we would not have, got off to that hot race that we got to. But I think we'll be sitting around that level right now where you'll be saying that it's a seller's market, it's not a neutral market, and demand is high in these areas. And this is one of those areas that has happened. And I think understandably, the sales prices may have been low, but realistically, those sales prices was going to increase anyway because the demand is here. Being one of the number one cities with military presence and a defensive sector outside of the Pentagon in DC, it was bound to happen eventually. It's just that the pandemic accelerated that portion a bit. So that's what I wanted to say about that. But let's get into our retiree segment here, where actually you got the article from we pulled the article up from realtor.com, and we'll talk about it here. Boomers choose happiness over affordability as the number one retirement hotspot in America is revealed. Okay, this article was just recently published on November 26th. So Americans approach retirement age, and those already at this stage are prioritizing happiness over affordability when looking for a new home. Most are seeking a destination that's a place of enjoyment, according to new research by U.S. News and World Report in its 2025 Best Places to Retire list. The 2025 Best Places to Retire list rankings reflect top cities across the country that meet retiree needs and desires. As a result, the U.S. News adjusted its scoring and placed the highest emphasis on happiness among the 6 factors used to calculate each city's overall retirement score. Their criteria were happiness, 27%, affordability, 25%, healthcare quality, 15%, retiree taxes, 13%, desirability, 12%, and job market, 8%. Now, that's interesting that they said job market 8% here in this retiree categories. But okay, happiness 27, affordability 25, healthcare 15, retirees taxes 13, desirability 12. Okay, got it. So Naples, Florida came in at number 1. Okay, got it. But we're looking for Virginia. That's what they said, right? So Virginia Beach. Let's see what they said about Naples, though. Hold on, let's go back to Naples before we get to Virginia Beach. We saw that it was number 2. But it says, in Naples, Florida, the pristine beaches, world-class golf courses, and year-round sunshine create an idyllic setting for enjoying retirement. Additionally, Naples boasts top-notch healthcare facilities, a vibrant cultural scene, and a variety of dining and shopping options, all of which enhance the quality of life for retirees. Naples' real estate market attracts buyers from across the country and internationally, many of whom are looking for second homes or places to retire. Okay. So the next one was Virginia Beach, with the median list price at $425, $50 over national median. Happiness boosters, beaches, waterfront, restaurants, museums, air shows, shopping, fishing, and horseback riding. Okay, so this is the happiness booster, right? So let's see what rounds out this 25. New York, Sarasota, Boise, Raleigh, Jacksonville, Huntsville, Charlotte, Fort Wayne, Green Bay, Washington, D.C., Charleston, San Francisco, South Bend, Lexington, Pensacola, Tampa, Port St. Lucie, Melbourne. Okay, so comment down below if you're watching from any of those cities. Comment down below, what do you really love about any of those cities that we just talked about in the top 20 of the best retiree destinations for national retirees. Okay, so which is interesting that happiness is there, because I believe that should be the number one factor when you're retired, because you should have done everything else up to retirement age. So I guess that really makes sense that, they're taking in happiness boosters there to make sure that you can understand what's going on there. So let's look at our local market here and talk about some data points that y'all would actually care to know about here. So we're going to get into those right here. We're going to talk about this article from the local real estate market in Hampton Roads, and it's actually talking about how the Hampton real estate market for November showed improvements when compared to November 2023, likely due to lower mortgage rates and an increased selection. Compared to the same month last year, data from the range shows the inventory had increased and pending sales were up, as were settled sales. Likewise, the median sales price was up 6%, and the median number of days of homes were on the market also rose. Now, while we do see some sellers needing to be more aggressive with their pricing, which benefits buyers overall, and selling prices remain healthy, which is good for home sellers. Now, we'll bring this image up as well, but this is something that I like to talk about here, where we talk about how inventory is starting to increase, which we just looked at. We saw how we trended directly from 2015 to now, where we're at about third of the homes being on the market than it was previously before. I think that is something that we need to really pay more of attention to. Now, I do think interest rates have aggressively made the marketplace and sellers understand how much they can really get for their home. Now, I would never tell anyone how to actually sell their home, but I really feel like a lot of times, a lot of home sellers, they get into this thing where they bought their home during the pandemic, or they bought it prior to the pandemic and heard from their friends how people was like just buying my house. I wasn't having to do any repairs. I was able to just tell them, you're going to take it as it is. If you want it, if you don't, we sold it as is. And I do think that there's a marketplace for selling homes as is. If your home is not highly desirable, I can understand why you may want to sell it as is, because it may be too much to repair to get the equity out of your home or get any equity out of your home. And it's going to make you basically go bankrupt just to fix the house, or might as well just tear the whole house down anyway. But realistically, a lot of times, a lot of sellers, they don't do themselves any favors by trying to sell the house as is and wind up biting the bullet on the cost of what they're going to actually be able to get for their home for the maximum value of the purchase price, or the maximum offer they'll be able to get, or the number of offers that they'll get in some cases. Now, in some cases, there are unique situations where you can sell your house as is and come away in a better position. But I do think that understanding with the new market that we're in with the interest rates, you have to be more aware of what you're actually selling your home for, what type of contingencies that you're trying to avoid as a home seller, and what does buyer demand and sentiment look like in your marketplace. I do think those things matter a lot. And with our inventory now starting to tick up a bit, with interest rates being steady where they're at, we're now starting to see where price appreciation is still continuing to happen at a slower rate, but sellers are still able to get basically what they're asking for their home, or not just a little bit more as well. But also those things are coming at conceding some things as well too. We're just in a completely different place than we were during the pandemic, and that's highly unfortunate for, I think, sellers, because sellers love that time in the market. But I think it's a great thing for buyers in this market right now, because buyers are really the transfer of ownership of these homes. Some of these average homeowner is going to be in their new home for at least 4 to 7 years, and in certain marketplaces that may be even 8 to 12 years. So the better the quality of home that a buyer is purchasing, especially at the rates that they're purchasing them at, and the payment that's associated with that rate, it's a win-win for most people. But I can understand why you could see it a little different in that way. Now let's get back to just the market summary. We're just going to show it to you real quick. If you haven't seen it in none of our previous videos, we'll leave that link down in the description below. But we just want to recap this real quick. You'll see settled sales was up 12.3%. From like year over year. You see active listings are up almost 1,000 more listings, almost, right? So 14.7%. And then you see pending sales was up over 100 sales more, 10%. New construction sales has went down by 15% to 192 in comparison to 224 year over year. Now, I think new construction is a unique conversation to have in our marketplace, because as you understand, we are part of the South in Virginia, and I know a lot of times when we get a lot of relocation buyers, especially our military buyers who are relocating from the South and other parts of the South, whether that's Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida in certain cases, what we wind up seeing, even North Carolina, what we typically wind up seeing is they want the suburban feel, because that's what they more likely were doing before they relocated to the Virginia area. And in our Hampton Roads market, it really provides opportunity for the suburban feel, but you got to travel a little bit further out than Virginia Beach. So in our surrounding markets like Hampton, Suffolk, Chesapeake, Franklin, Smithfield, Williamsburg in certain cases, even in certain parts of Newport News, the further you get away from the city. Now, Virginia Beach do offer those opportunities, but for what people are looking for when they come out, usually when I deal with a buyer who wants to get that suburban feel, they want to have a little bit of distance between their neighbors. They don't want to feel like they walk outside, they see their neighbor immediately, or they go in their backyard, they can see their neighbor over in their backyard doing whatever it is. And that means that you have to travel a little bit further, which that puts you about 15 to 20 minutes further out than you typically want to be. And then when you do, Then you still have to deal with HOAs, things of that nature. People care about all those things. But new construction sales are now that far out. They are now building in Franklin, for the most part, new subdivisions. Or there's people who are still traveling in North Carolina and working and commuting in Virginia in the Hampton Roads area, because that's what they need. They need that type of living, which is fine. That's what you choose. But the opportunities now are even getting further away from the seven cities, unless you're going over to the peninsula side in Newport News, Hampton area. Then there's still new construction development still going on in those areas as well too. So that's something to take into consideration, that builders have slowed their building, and which is different than 2008. I will say, in 2008, builders was continuing to build, but now they realize that they learn from their mistake. They're not doing that now. They're really taking their time and being very systematic in building to a certain amount of inventory, waiting for those homes to sell, and then starting to build. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of builders now are waiting till they get an accepted offer on the new construction build before they actually build the home as well too. So those are things that a lot of people are unaware of as well too. So let's jump right into our segment on mortgage rates. Okay, so we are currently looking at mortgage rates right now as we talk about home sales. You'll see the 30-year fix is at 7.06, 15-year fix at 6.46. You'll see the 30-year jumbo is at 7.30, and you'll see the 30-year FHA 6.39, as well as the 30-year VA at 6.40. Now, interest rates have been steady today across the board. They came down slightly. I think 0.05 is like on average what you're seeing come down on the interest rates. To me, folks, I think interest rates is one of those things where we're not going to see the heavy movement that you need to see yet until they start to see inflation improve dramatically. I think buyers have now gotten to a point where they are now accepting that rates are what they are. And I think sellers are now getting to a point now where rates may not be as harsh as they were. And now that's why we're seeing a little bit more inventory coming to the market. And I think that is that's going to be a give and take in certain areas. So what I mean, so when we talk about buyers, let's just talk about it from that standpoint, then we'll get into it with sellers' standpoint as well. When it comes to buyers, a lot of times we was hearing people was saying, "Oh, I'm gonna wait for the rates to come down." A lot of people was fear mongering, saying, "Hey, we're going back to 2008. We're going to see rates go to 10%." And I'm sitting here saying, I don't see rates going to 10%, but then I also don't see us going back to 2008 from a housing crash either, because now housing crashes can be regional, but a national housing crash, we don't have enough inventory. We don't even have enough apartments in a lot of places. So for us to have went that direction, I felt that was kind of ludicrous to say in with respect, but I do think in the Hampton Roads market, with the interest rates being what they are, our military members still need somewhere to stay. Our government employees need somewhere to stay. The headquarters that is now relocated to the Hampton Roads area, their employees and their board members need somewhere to stay. Our market has enough inventory to last, but not enough inventory if we was to get another big boom of employment coming to our area. So those things have to be considered. Those things have to really be taken into account. And that's what the interest rates are now doing. They're now making people realize, you know what? I can't wait any longer. If you do wait any longer, the price appreciation is going to be crazy in a couple years. Like, yes, the people who bought during the pandemic, they made out very, very well. They made out in equity, and they made out in price, the payment of the home that they have, that now they're almost, I like to call them forced landlords, because if they decide to purchase the next house, it still almost don't make sense to get rid of the house that you're in because of how cheap the payment is and how much you can charge in rent, and use the rent to offset the cost of the next house. Okay, I know I just said a lot. Okay, so let's fire up the iPad and let me show you exactly what it is that I'm talking about when I bring up the seller dynamic. I'm gonna actually talk about it from just an overall standpoint. I won't use loan types because loan types will make it a little confusing, but I will break it down just from a systematic standpoint. Okay, let's do that. So we'll see here that, let's say in 2020, one. As that kicks back on, don't worry, it'll come back on. So let's say you bought your first house for $280,000, okay? And I'm gonna tell you exactly what this is the purchase price, but let's put some specs to it. Let's say it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it's 1,650 square feet. How about that? All right. Now, I'm gonna just come up with a number here. Let's say that after you paid the house, you got the house, your payment is at this point $1,300. Okay, this is your monthly mortgage payment. Okay, now let's say that you either your family grown or your income has substantially increased since 2021. Okay, let's just say whatever example that you wanted to come up with. Let's say you needed to downsize, but you wanted to go from a 2-story to a 1-story, but you wanted the same square footage or bigger, whatever. It's a multitude of reasons why you would need to move, right? But let's just say in today's market right now that you're looking to get a $400,000 house, okay? This is your purchase price that you agreed to. And now you're moving up into a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house, and it is 2,300 square feet. Okay, and let's say that payment is 2,800. 2,800. Okay, I think this is a good example. 2,800. Okay. Now, most time when I talk to a seller and they're thinking about buying a house, they're like, well, when they say, "Well, I need to sell my house, I got to buy a house." Right? Where am I going to move to? Well, you can move to this house, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, for $2,800 a month, if that's the payment that you want. A lot of times, a lot of people don't want the payment. But here's the realistic scope of this, right? If you moved into that $280,000 house in 2021, probably in Hampton Roads, more than likely, this house now rents. Okay, it rents for $2,200. So now that means even if you paid let's not even worry about paying a property manager, but let's just say if you got this house rated for $1,300 that you pay a payment on, and you're renting it for $2,200, your $1,300 payment is now netting you a $900 rent return, ROI on return for renting it. Okay. Now that $900 can actually come here and offset your costs to a $1,900 payment. Okay, $1,900 to move up $400,000, but you get to control over $680,000 in real estate. All right, this is what your portfolio now has as an asset. I can't spell today. Portfolio asset. Okay, almost $700,000 in value. Now, let's say in 5 years, these increase to $900,000, but you only pay $1,900 to control $900 worth of asset. Who doesn't want that? Is that not something that anyone would want? I think this is why sellers are now coming back into the market. This is why I think that, like, interest rate, yes, helps the situation. But I also think that sellers are now realize that they are pushed into being forced landlords, but also are in positions to where they can control multiple assets, where theoretically they're got a net positive to where they can still rent the house out they have, take the equity or the net profit from the rent into the next house, offset that cost. Offsetting that cost now leads them to where they control 2 assets for what's that? It's a 1,900. So let's do, 1,900 divided by 1,300. Minus 1,300 divided by 1,900. 31%, 32% increase in mortgage payment. You increase your mortgage payment by 32% to control 2 assets that could potentially garner you $900,000 in assets in 10 years or so. This is why I think where we're at right now. If you want me to break that down for you a little bit more or show you why I think there's unique situations where you can do this with your VA loan or even in the FHA loan market, let's talk about those things. And if I can't provide that information for you, I definitely have some resources that we definitely can provide you with to even show you that on a grander scale. But I think if you're a veteran on active duty, or even if you're a retiree, I think there's advantages to your VA loan that helps you do this even better than what we just talked about now. So if you want to know those things, use my link down in the description below. Book a consult with me, and we'll talk about those things offline if you want to talk about them. So that's our mortgage rates conversation for today. I mean, I'm glad to talk about those type of things. I think that's where we're at with the interest rates, though. I do believe interest rates are going to come down. They're going to come down, but they're not going to come down as fast as people want to. And I'm saving this type of conversation for my economic forecast 2025. This is why I ask you to if you find value, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell, because when we bring the economic forecast 2025 for Hampton Roads, I want to break this down for you systematically across the board, so that way you understand what I see as part of the marketplace, where we're going. And I think that there's an opportunity here for buyers and sellers, but we're not in a situation where it's going to be one or the other. So I want to discuss that in full detail and kind of give you a recap on where I think we're going, honestly. So and that's where we're at. So, and we already discussed how job growth is actually starting to impact Virginia Beach enough to where you're going to see those type of things actually play out in 2025. I think that's where we're really going. Now, let's get into our buyer and seller segment, where you each ask the question. We pull a question from a buyer side. We pull a question from a seller side. If you want to send us questions, definitely sign up using our link, using our newsletter down below. Or using our newsletter, we talk every week with our buyers and sellers, and we give you the opportunity to send us feedback on questions that you may have, and we actually discuss those questions on air. So in today's episode, we have one buyer, one seller question. We're going to get into both of those. We're going to start with the buyer side question, and that is, with declining mortgage rates, how can buyers take advantage of the current market conditions in Virginia Beach? Well, great question. With declining mortgage rates, we have now gotten into a situation where easement of pricing has started to happen as well too. We're not really seeing the accelerated prices with the easing of mortgage rates. And like I said before, now you have enough inventory as well too, where you're not really dealing with a lot of competition. Now, I also think that quality of homes on the market matter now as well too. During the pandemics, people was just looking for somewhere to stay at. Now, if the house is not in the right fit for a family or a buyer, they have options. And with them having options, some homes are going to sit a lot longer unless they are making the right concessions to where the buyer can look past some of these issues that they're going to be dealing with inheriting the house. So I do think mortgage rates have now let buyers become way more selective, which is a great thing in our marketplace, because what I think a lot of buyers don't realize is that the old $150,000 is now the new $270,000. The old $200,000 is now the new $350,000. So we're seeing these numbers move with the price appreciation that we've seen because of just economic growth and the stabilization of purchases around our neighborhoods, to where affordability has changed a bit, and the interest rates are allowing us to see that inventory will continue to grow and affordability is not really moving, which is unfortunate. So we need to kind of see a spike in affordability happen as well too. I don't know when we're going to see it, but I think that is affecting a lot of what we're seeing in the marketplace as well too. So great question. I appreciate that. And then let's get into the next question is, why is now a great time to list your home for sale in Virginia Beach or Hampton Roads? So we pulled one, but we got these three questions on the seller side are so good, but we're going to save them. I'm going to answer just this one specifically. Okay. So why is now a great time to list your home for sale in Virginia Beach or Hampton Roads? Okay. Now, I always think it's always a great time when you've made the decision that it's a great time. Now, right now, with the way interest rates are, you're still able to take advantage of the interest rates being at where they're at and still maximizing value. Now, if interest rates decide to slide a bit here, competition is going to get fierce. Homes are going to come on the market a lot faster. So I think right now, if you are already considering selling your home, you're already primed to get the most value out of your home right now. You wait for interest rates to come down. Yeah, you're going to get more buyer pool opportunities, but then there's going to be other sellers who are going to be jumping in with you. And right now, you still have seller hesitation going on right now. And I think if you are trying to maximize the most of what you're going to get out of your equity with less competition, you're in the right market right now. If an interest rates even see a 5 in front of it in the marketplace, you're going to see a little bit more inventory, and they're going to be buying it up. And if you sat on the market a while, or you decide to get on the market a day of and thinking that that's going to be enough time, it may work out for you in that type of situation. But getting ahead of it, getting things done in this marketplace right now, you can actually save yourself the headache, and you can be on the shopping side with your profit, maximizing the opportunities before interest rates come down. I think that's the other thing that sellers don't think about, is that if they're selling to buy an upgrade of a home, you probably want to do it now, because interest rates right now are still stagnant enough to where buyer sentiment is not heavy enough. But when you have the cash and equity coming in, you're already a higher qualified buyer. But then also being a higher qualified buyer, you have the opportunity to outpace anybody else who's trying to get in the same market that you are. So I think that sometimes you have to think about it too. If you're trying to level up property, you need to be thinking about this 30 to 45 days in advance of having your home on the market, so you can be assessing the inventory and getting to where you need to go. Because as a seller, you actually have advantages to where you can, delay your move out, delay your closing until you find the property, or however you want to do it. This is why you need to work with an agent, and we could talk about those things as you want to walk through them. But I do think there's an opportunity for sellers to upgrade property now with the current interest rates the way they are, and get into their next property before the interest rates decline and that buyer frenzy happens again, and so they don't have to be in that market. But then also you can take advantage of a refinance at that point in time as well too. So that's my answer to that question. I think that was a great question. So just to recap, we talked about how inventory is up, how it has trended from 2015 to now. We talked about how Hampton Roads has now become the second most highly desirable destination for people who are retiring nationally. And we talked about how Hampton Roads is actually number 3 globally, nationally, when it comes to how much inventory is actually expected to move in the next year, 2025, from an economic standpoint. Talked about interest rates today. We answered your questions on the buyer and seller side, and even broke down how you as a seller can take advantage of the marketplace right now by becoming a forced landlord and navigating 2 properties versus only selling your property and actually upgrading property if you wanted to. Now, if you found value in this content, definitely hit us with a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please go ahead and ring that notification bell too, so that way that you could be the first to learn about everything that you need to know about the Hampton Roads real estate market from your #1 real estate source in Hampton Roads. Also, if you ever find yourself in the need of needing help with real estate, definitely use our links in the description down below, and you can go ahead and start your own crafted search by using our website link for property searches down below as well too. We'll catch you in the next video. Y'all stay safe. Peace.